Extras in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga are the unlocks you get from collecting red power bricks in levels. Some of them, such as the stud multipliers or invincibility, are incredibly useful, whilst others, such as silhouettes or daisy chains, are not. Today, I thought it would be a cool idea if we go ahead and rank every single extra, so let's get into it. Starting off our tier list, we have Extra Toggle. This immediately goes into S tier. Extra Toggle allows you to play as characters that you ordinarily can't, characters that are not part of the character roster. I think what's cool about this extra is the characters it gives you, because you get weird things such as Han Solo and Carbonite, who just kind of jumps around. You got the skeleton that has completely custom animations where he will detach and reattach his limbs whilst fighting people. He also makes a really strange sound when he walks, and also has a death sound that isn't what you'd expect from a skeleton. You've got the Wampa and Rancor in vehicle levels. You've got a load of droids from the Sandcrawler in episode 4. You've got the Bow Droid in both vehicle levels and normal levels. You've got the training remote, which is really small, but at the same time kind of weird. You've got the Womp Rat, and then you've just got a load of Rebel and Imperial characters who aren't that interesting. However, simply because of some of the character choices they give, this is an S tier extra. Whenever I load up LEGO Star Wars to play it, I always have this one turned on. I don't think I've ever loaded the game and not had it on, simply because it's just so fun to use. Okay, so next up we have Fertilizer. Fertilizer does exactly what you would imagine. If you get on something like a Bantha and then press the interact key, the Bantha will dispense poop, and that is quite literally it. Going to put this one in the C tier, because it's kind of useless but at the same time kind of funny. You'll also see a bit later on in the video that there is another extra that is incredibly similar to Fertilizer, but it actually provides some kind of value. Okay, moving on to Disguise now. Now, as the name implies, Disguise basically just puts a giant pair of glasses, a nose, and a moustache on your character. The thing that I love about Disguise though, is that it applies to vehicles and animals as well. So literally everything you can imagine has a ginormous pair of glasses, a nose, and a moustache, which is quite funny. So I'm going to go ahead and put Disguise in the B tier. Next up on the list is Tractor Beam. Tractor Beam is a vehicle level extra that when activated will pull enemy vehicles towards you. It's actually quite cool and is incredibly useful, because it will pull the vehicles towards you in a way that will make them really easy to shoot. It's also quite useful for gathering torpedoes, because it pulls vehicles that have torpedoes on the back of them towards you as well. The only downside is it plays a bit of a weird sound, which can get quite annoying. You've just got that sound playing permanently. Other than that, fairly solid extra. I'll put it in B tier. I wouldn't say it's bad, just personally I don't really tend to go back and replay the levels where it's useful in. I'm not one to go back and play vehicle levels often, so yeah. Okay, what do we got next? Self-destruct. I think self-destruct's quite a cool one. Once again, put it in B tier. Fairly middle of the range extra. Self-destruct essentially makes it so droid characters blow up when you're playing with them. You can press the interact key and you'll explode. It's really funny, especially when you explode something like the Gong Droid. It can also be used to open up bounty hunter areas. It can be used to destroy silver LEGO pieces, which is quite cool. It's definitely something worth noting. But yeah, once again, quite a funny one. Fairly solid, fairly decent one. So I'm going to put that one in B tier. Moving on to Stutters times 4. Now looking at Stutters times 4 in isolation, it isn't actually as good as you might think. I think these stud multipliers start to become really good when you start adding things like times 6, times 8, times 10. So simply for that reason alone, I'm going to put times 4 in A tier, because it simply isn't as good as some of the higher multipliers. Okay, so regenerate hearts. Regenerate hearts will slowly, after a few seconds, start to regenerate your health after you've taken some damage. This one is incredibly useful, especially when fighting large groups of enemies, because it means you can just get into some cover, hide away for a bit, regenerate some health, and then come back and continue fighting. It also removes the hassle and the randomness of trying to find a heart pickup to collect, because that can be quite random at times and can take a while, because you have to fight more enemies to get heart pickups. Overall, really good extra. I'm going to put this one in the A tier. Okay, next up is Daisy Chains. Now Daisy Chains turns the chains when you're grappling into daisies, into flowers. And like I said in the intro of the video, this doesn't actually serve a purpose. It doesn't change your gameplay in any way, it doesn't help you in any way. However, it adds colour, and it's fairly harmless extra. So I'm going to go and put this one in C tier. Next up we have Chewbacca carrying C-3PO. This one is a reference to episode 5, where Chewbacca carries C-3PO around. And all the extra does is just put C-3PO half built on Chewbacca's back. Other than that though, it doesn't really do a whole lot, it's mainly just cosmetic. So I'm going to put this one once again in the middle, in B tier. Moving on to Fast Force now, which allows Force users to use the Force a lot quicker. This works on certain things such as Force pulling, Force pushing, and using the Force on enemies. It also speeds up the Force when you're doing things such as the 2-player activity, where you have to stand 2 people on boxes and use the Force to levitate each other. as well as just using the force on panels and using the force to build things and move things. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in 80, just because it's quite nice to have the force sped up, because sometimes you're holding the force button for quite a while. Moving on to probably one of the best extras in the entire game, invincibility. Invincibility makes it so you can't die unless you fall off of ledges. I guess the only downside of invincibility is that it makes a lot of other extras redundant, because once you're invincible you can kind of do whatever you want, so yeah. Either way, S2. Next up we have fast build, which is the instant S2. Fast build speeds up the building time, and is incredibly useful. This is one of the extras that I always have turned on when I'm playing, because it just saves time. If you're on the Wii, you basically get this extra for free, because you can shake the Wii motion nunchuck to build faster. But other than that, yeah, S tier for that one. Up next we have Minikit Detector. Now Minikit Detector points you in the way of minikits, and it points you towards them. That said, it isn't the best of things. Sometimes it will point you towards rooms where minikits are, and then tell you the minikit isn't actually in the room. Or sometimes it will be pointing you in the direction of a minikit that doesn't exist yet, or a minikit you have to spawn in, and it will tell you where the minikit spawns in, instead of how to get it. So it can at times be a bit confusing to read. That said, knowing roughly where minikits are is certainly useful, so we're going to put this one in 80. Up next we have Bounty Hunter Rockets. Growing up, this one was always one of my favourite extras in the game. Essentially, what it allows you to do is when you're playing as either Jango Fett or Boba Fett, it allows you to shoot the rocket on the back of their jetpack, and I always thought that was really cool. The rocket will go into things and it will blow up and it will explode, dealing some damage and destroying certain things, and that's about it. But simply because I enjoy it so much, and I think it's a really cool idea, and honestly should have been an actual feature as part of Jango and Boba, because you do see them use the rockets in the films. It goes in S tier. Contrasting that last pick completely is TOW Death Star. This one is instantly D tier. Now TOW Death Star turns the bombs at the end of the cables that you tow in vehicle levels into the Death Star itself. The problem with that though is that this bomb towing mechanic is only available in 2 levels, one of which being Gunship Cavalry, meaning you would have had to willingly choose to load up either Half Battle or Gunship Cavalry to look at this extra. And seeing as how one of those levels is okay at best, and one of those levels is the second worst video game level of all time, being beaten by only the perfect run from Super Mario Galaxy 2, it gets D tier. Horrible extra. Next up we have Super Blasters. Now Super Blasters doubles the damage that blasters do. The additional damage is definitely nice, and for that reason, this one goes in B tier. Next up we have Super Lightsabers, which is basically the same thing as Super Blasters, but for lightsabers, doubles the lightsaber damage. And it also makes your lightsaber purple. Once again, because it's basically the same thing we just looked at, I'm going to put this one in B tier. Okay, so Studs times 2 is our next extra, and this one multiplies the amount of studs you get by 2. Now because we looked at Studs times 4 on its own, I'm going to have to look at this one on its own as well. And having your studs multiplied by 2 really isn't all that useful, so I'm going to have to put this one in B tier. Okay, so we've got another stud multiplier now. This is Studs times 6. This one is actually very useful. Having your studs multiplied by 6 is good, especially if you've got 2 and 4 unlocked already. This is where the stud multiplier shines when you combine them together to multiply by larger numbers, so I'm going to have to put Studs times 6 in the A tier. Next we have Super Zapper. Now Super Zapper affects the Astromech Droid Zapper and the Zapper that Jawas have. When you've got Super Zapper on and you zap a droid, instead of disabling it, it will just straight up kill it. And when you go up to a regular trooper, instead of doing absolutely nothing, it will confuse them instead. Quite a cool extra, as it definitely gives some more use to the Zapper, and gives a bit more purpose to the droids and the Jawa. So for that reason, I'm going to put this one in B tier. Studs times 8 is an easy S tier extra. We are getting into the bigger numbers now, when it comes to stud multipliers, so having it increased by 8 is insanely useful. Super Ewok Catapult is a fun one. This one makes it so the catapult projectiles that you fire when you're playing as an Ewok explode and are glowing purple like torpedoes, and it's also quite useful as the explosions are able to open silver areas, open bounty hunter areas, that kind of thing. So I'm going to put this one in A tier. Studs times 10, S tier, instantly. This is by far the best individual stud multiplier you can get, so yeah, S tier for that one. Next up we have Poo Money, which is similar to fertilizer, however instead of pooping out actual poop, the animals poop out studs, which is in my opinion a bit more useful. Still kind of a weird extra though, so I'm going to put this one in C tier. Next up is Deflect Bolts. Deflect Bolts basically means that whenever you're getting shot at, the bolts will instantly deflect off of you. It's fairly similar to Perfect Deflect, however once again invincibility is probably better than both of them, so for that reason I'm going to put this extra in B tier. Walkie Talkie Disable. is kind of a niche extra. Whenever you're using a character with a walkie-talkie, so that you can monitor droids or the Imperial spy, it will disable enemy droids that are around you, which obviously leads to the problem of if there are no droids in the level, it just won't really do anything. So, has a fairly limited use, and for that reason, it gets a C tier. Next up is Super Astromech. Now Super Astromech essentially makes it so that when you zap a droid, if there are any more droids nearby, the zap will bounce off and cause a chain reaction between the droids, disabling all of them. And I won't lie, this is actually pretty satisfying to look at, just seeing all the droids slowly get disabled one after another. That said, this doesn't do anything to normal troopers, so it does lose a bit of functionality there. And also, there isn't really any point having this if there are no droids in the level. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the C tier. My next extra on the list is Infinite Torpedoes. This one gives you unlimited torpedoes when you spawn into a vehicle level that has them, meaning you haven't got to hunt down any of the enemy vehicles to collect torpedoes, which is quite cool. It's quite a useful one, however I personally don't go and play vehicle levels back that often, so I'm probably going to put this one in B tier. Red Brick Detector. This one is essentially the same as Minikit Detector, but for red bricks. And it has all of the same issues that Minikit Detector has, with the arrows sometimes being a bit hard to understand. But because I'd say red bricks are more useful than Minikits overall, I'm going to put this one in A tier. Super Thermal Detonator. This one increases the explosion radius of thermal detonators. It's honestly quite fun to just have a massive explosion when you throw one, because everything gets destroyed, the radius is incredibly large. This one causes absolute chaos, and once again it's quite useful for destroying the silver Lego pieces, because you haven't got to be as precise, because the explosion radius is a lot bigger. So I like this one, I'm going to put this one in A tier. Adding even more chaos to the list is Exploding Blaster Bolts. This one, just like Super Thermal Detonator, is incredibly fun to use. It makes the blaster bolts absolutely massive when you shoot them. They're absolutely ginormous, and they explode upon contact. This one also has the added benefit of being able to destroy silver Lego pieces, which normal blaster bolts cannot do. So I'm going to put this one in A tier. Just a fun one again. Lots of explosions, lots of chaos. Next up is Darkside. Darkside is a really simple one. It just allows Jedi characters to use the Force on Darkside Force objects. It's incredibly useful to have, because it saves you having to swap characters to a Darkside character, so I'm going to put this one in S tier. Okay, next up we have Super Slam. Super Slam increases the damage and radius of the Jedi Slam attack. This is the jump where you double jump and then press the attack button. This one is another extra that I really like, because the Jedi Slam attack is probably the most overpowered attack in the game. It's great for dealing with large groups of enemies and bosses, so making it even better is not a bad thing at all, and for that reason it gets S tier. Third S tier extra in a row now with Super Gonk. Super Gonk to me is probably one of the funniest extras in the entire game, because it just essentially gives the Gonk droid incredible speed. It also gives the Gonk the ability to jump, and there's something about the Gonk jumping with those really short legs that adds to the humour, which is honestly quite cool. Makes the Gonk droid actually fairly usable, because his main issue is just he's so slow. He still can't do a whole lot, but just, you know, giving the Gonk something is definitely better than having nothing. It gets even better when you combine Super Gonk with Self-Destruct, because what you end up with is a really fast moving battery, because that's all Gonks really are in Star Wars, they're just batteries. A really fast moving battery that can explode, which if that isn't cool, then I don't know what is. Plus, you know, everyone likes Gonk droids, so yeah, easy S tier. Super Slap is up next. Super Slap makes it so that when you slap an enemy, when you punch them, it will one-shot them, instead of taking 2 or 3 shots. I'm going to put this one in B tier personally, because I rarely punch characters. I'm usually using a lightsaber for most of the fights when I play the game. However, I can definitely see how being able to one-shot things when punching would be useful. Just I don't really use many characters to punch when playing the game. This next one is a really strange one, and it is Vehicle Smart Bomb. Now Vehicle Smart Bomb explodes nearby vehicles, and that is basically all it does. If any vehicles are near you, and you hold down the button that would usually fire torpedoes, it will just explode the nearby vehicles after a short amount of time. So it's kind of weird and kind of niche. It could have a purpose. Yeah, Vehicle Smart Bomb doesn't really feel too good to use. There's a delay between you pressing the button and the enemy vehicles exploding. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in D tier, because it honestly doesn't really do anything, and doesn't feel good to use either. Perfect Deflect is up next. Now Perfect Deflect removes the timing element of when you are deflecting a blaster bolt back at an enemy. It's definitely a useful one to have, as it just makes life a bit easier, and guarantees that the blast bolt will be deflected back at the enemy. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in A tier. Up next, we have character studs. Fairly self-explanatory with this one. Whenever you kill an enemy, they'll drop studs. It's quite a nice one, and the studs are definitely useful to have, especially when you have some of the lower stud multipliers. However, you don't really get many studs from killing people, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one in B tier. Got another stud extra now. This one is Stud Magnet. This one's S tier, easily. Being able to walk near the studs and collecting them, instead of having to go out of your way to walk on them, is certainly helpful. It's just a great extra to have, and it's incredibly useful, so I guess S tier. Okay, next up we have another favourite of mine. This one is Force Grapple Leap, and it allows you to use grapple points as a Jedi or Sith character. This one to me has always been a really cool extra, because not only does it allow you to traverse the levels easier, it also replicates the bosses, because in a lot of the levels the bosses have really high jumps, and I always remember thinking as a child how Force Grapple Leap was similar to those high jumps, and for that reason it gets an S tier for me. It's useful, and it plays a really cool animation when you do it. This Stormtroopers replaces the guns that the clones and Stormtroopers have with carrots, which is definitely useful, means that you can't get shot. The only downside to this extra is that it only works on clones and Stormtroopers, and the Imperial Guards. It does not work on droids, which if you're playing any of the prequel levels, could be a bit of a problem. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a B tier, simply because there are better extras you could use to avoid taking damage. I guess the only real downside, if you're playing as a Stormtrooper character, you will also have a carrot, and you won't be able to shoot either, which can be a little bit irritating. Next up we have Force Pull, which simply pulls enemies towards you and crushes droids in one shot. I'd say honestly having enemies pulled towards you is more useful than pushing them away, because it allows you to attack them easier as they're close to you. So I'm going to put this one in B tier. Silhouettes. Turns all of the characters into silhouettes, just makes them pure black. This one honestly I don't like too much, because it just kind of makes the characters black. You don't see their faces, you don't see anything. The only reason I put daisy chains in C tier instead of D tier was because of the colour. And just making everything black kind of looks like it's in the void, looks kind of ominous. So I'm going to put this one in D tier. Doesn't do anything either, and removes all of the facial features and details from the characters. And finally, ending on a fairly simple one, is Beep Beep, when you're in some of the smaller rideable vehicles such as the car or the milk float like vehicle. Once again, fairly harmless, fairly comical, but doesn't really do a whole lot, so I'm going to give this one a C tier. And there we go, every single extra has now been ranked. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with my rankings, or if there are any ones that you would change around. Maybe some might be higher, some might be a bit lower. I'd be interested to know in the comments. But other than that, the video on screen now is my last video, where we take a look at 19 completely useless features from LEGO Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars. Please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you all later.